You're listening to Black Parents Aging, where we help you navigate caring for aging loved ones. Every Wednesday, we'll discuss how to help your parents successfully navigate this new season of life. We are going to talk about legal, health, technology, and finances. Here's your host attorneys, Olivia Smith and Nicola Robinson.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Black Parents Aging. I am your host, Nicola Robinson. I am so delighted that you are here and you are in for such a treat today. We have another guest on the show, Dr. Lisa Oliver. Say hi to the people, Dr. Oliver.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me, Nicola.
So I am so excited. This is a topic that we don't talk about enough, in my opinion, and Dr. Oliver is probably going to get into it in so much detail. But before we jump into that, let me just give you a little bit of information for those of you that don't know. Dr. Lisa Oliver, a life transitions educator and certified grief counselor. Dr. Oliver educates individuals on life transitions and its residual effects. So we're talking grief, mourning, and bereavement. Through this education, individuals are empowered to make informed decisions concerning advanced care plans and are guided towards comprehending their feelings, their emotions, and actions that occur because of loss. The passion of this work names from a desire to mitigate the potential generational dysfunction that occurs when families postpone discussions of these inevitable topics. Whoo, she is going to give it to you guys. Dr. Oliver has a YouTube channel and it's called Dr. Lisa Talks About. And this is where she addresses topics such as what not to say when someone you loved has died, why you should always go to the funeral. Oh, these are so good. I cannot wait to hear little bits about this. She also has a blog called dyinganddeathtalk.com and is a podcaster herself with the humorist Jerry Dry.
Yeah.
Jerry Dry. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And the podcast is called Dr. Death and the Humorist. So I did not mention her book, and I have to mention her book. Dr. Oliver has a book called Final Wishes, a workbook for planning a funeral. So guys, we're talking about death. I'm sure by that bio, you figured it out. So Dr. Oliver, tell people kind of what you do and how you got into this.
So I got into it because it started with my father. He had prostate cancer and he had hospice care. And I was so impressed by the hospice care and how these people are not afraid of death. And, at the time, this was about 16 years ago, but at the time we were all downstairs like, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And we had this hospice care provider and she just talked to my father as she was bathing him and just talking to him like, because he was living in Maryland, the Orioles, they lost last night. And she's just talking to him. And then she comes downstairs and talks to us and try to find out, where we are emotionally. And I was just so impressed with her work that in addition to volunteering at a hospice, I decided to find out how hospice care professionals learn what they learn. And the reason why is because our schools, medicine and nursing and social work, we prepare them for the medical part of dying, but we don't prepare them for the emotional conversations. And so I wanted to find out how hospice care providers, how they learn it. And the truth is they learn it on the fly because there's no course, in the whole curriculum, maybe only like one or two courses when, death is a huge thing and all of us have to address it at one point or another. And I find that there's this lacking among the clergy, among the medical community about the conversations that people want to have. So, and we don't talk about it ourselves. So again, I want to mitigate generational dysfunction, right? And so there's often, it kind of starts when Big Mama gets sick and she has to go into the hospital, into the ICU. And so, a lot of decisions have to be made in a short period of time. And if these things are not planned out and documented and distributed to those individuals who you trust to handle your wishes, there's a whole lot of friction. And, you have one person who's like, we need to keep Big Mama alive at all costs. There's another one that's saying, no, Big Mama has lived her life. Let's let her go peacefully. And then there's another one that's even saying, you know what? Big Mama might be just laying as a vegetable, but as long as she's breathing, I have a mama. So you have, instead of loving on Big Mama and telling jokes and telling stories, everybody's clashing. And the research shows that even though Big Mama may not be able to talk, she can feel, she can sense, she can hear all that distress, all that that anger, that frustration,
that drama,
that drama, and that causes spiritual distress. So where Big Mama may want to release and go into the next world, she's holding on because she feels as though if she dies, the family's just gonna. And then it doesn't stop there, right? And so okay, Big Mama finally dies. Then we get to the funeral. So then we have these arguments over should Big Mama wear the yellow dress or the blue pantsuit? And we all know it ain't even about the yellow dress or the blue pantsuit, but you're still upset, and so it goes on and on and on. And generation wise, you got two sides of the family not speaking and people don't even really know why. And I really think it's because we don't talk about the things that matter before they matter. Right.
Oh,
So
you just said such a word. I mean, I've literally lived exactly what you just
yeah,
said
I
with my
remember you telling
grandmother.
me. Yes, I remember you telling me.
Yes.
And I know it's hard. It's a hard topic, but it's so necessary. I mean, if we could just imagine how things would be if Big Mama gave someone the document to say exactly what she wanted, because eventually someone's going to have to make that decision. And then if that person makes the decision, you have the other siblings that are probably like, you killed Mama. It's just all this. And then the person who finally makes the decision is second guessing themselves. And so, if we want to leave a legacy of peace and order, we really need to get our house in order, literally. And so many times, and shut me up if you need me, because I know I'm going, because I
No,
get
you
passionate
are
about this.
fine.
Okay.
I think that's the beautiful thing. You are so passionate about this. This is
Mhm.
so in line with the work we do, because we do healthcare
Yeah.
documentation with our clients as well. So I will
Right.
never cut you off.
Okay,
So go
okay.
ahead.
Feel free if you. But see, the thing is, when I tell people what I do, and I'll say, I used to say I'm a death, dying, and bereavement educator, and then people would just walk away, almost like if they look at me, I'm going to just strike them dead, right? So I
Because in
changed
our
it.
community, we think about if you talk about death, it's gonna
Yes,
happen. It's like you're bringing
yes,
it. It's like you're
yes,
inviting him in. So I
yeah,
can totally see
exactly.
why you cannot put that on your business card.
I can't. Or when I tell people what I do, and I'll explain to people, I say, you know what? When the lottery goes over 100 million, for some reason, I start talking about it a whole lot and doing a whole lot of planning, and I'm still working. So obviously, if you're talking about it, it ain't gonna bring it in the house. I changed it to life transition education.
Okay.
And the reason why is because if we think about it, if in this general terms, we go through death and birth all the time. If you decide to get married, it's the death of you being single, but it's the birth of you starting a life with someone. And in that death and in that birth, there's grief, because you may realize as a married person, you cannot just go out and spend money like you usually do. So there's grief in your old life. So there's death, there's birth, there's grief, there's bereavement in everything we do. And I'm trying to get people to understand that, let's normalize this, because I was telling you I do these death cafes. And I do these death cafes because I want to normalize the conversation. And how I always start the conversation, talking about death and dying, is that not all of us can or want to have a child. However, if I were to go to Publix down the street right now and ask 10 people, tell me something about birth or childbirth or something, they could say only women, the stomach gets big, there's a whole lot of screaming and crying. They can tell you something about it. And you have men, little boys, everything. But when you talk about death, everybody's going to experience it. And we don't have any serious conversation or thoughts about it until, again, we're in that ICU situation or we're given a terminal diagnosis. And we have to make a lot of decisions in a short period of time. And that's very stressful. So I just want us to normalize the conversation and just, I don't know. It grieves me. It really grieves me when people are just so afraid to talk about death and dying. And I guess that's why I'm trying to normalize it and say, we go through death and dying and birth. Because flowers you get from Trader Joe's, they're gorgeous. but they're dying because they've been cut from the source. And so, you know, again, everything that we do has a death and dying and a grieving component. So,
Well, let's talk about the death cafes because I
okay.
never heard of this until I met you. So,
Right.
to
Okay.
get people to understand what that is, because I'm thinking cafe, coffee, bagel,
Yes, yes. And so it started in London. A guy named John Underwood started it, and he was really interested in these something, it was called Cafe Mortels in France, like back in the 80s. And so he started talking about this with his friends in his basement one time. And his mother just happened to be there, who was a psychiatrist. And so they just had this conversation, and it was free flowing, and it was just amazing. It lasted like 4 hours. So then they realized several things. One is that when you're not going to be judged, because they were amongst friends, when you're not going to be judged, you're more able to express yourself freely. And that truthfully, everyone has an interest in this topic, but a lot of people, because they were in a safe environment, they didn't feel as though the people were going to look at them crazy or weird or anything. So it came over to the United States, I think in 2011, and we've been doing them here in Atlanta, I want to say since 2010. Before the pandemic, there was two people who were doing it. Some folks over in Oakland Cemetery.
Okay.
That I was doing in the library system. So again, John Underwood established this. And so the purpose of a death cafe is to make people aware of their finite life. And then once you're aware of your finite life, you start to live more authentically, and you start to not push things off. You just start to live, you know? And in a lot of cases, if you think about a person who's given a terminal diagnosis, that's when they start to live. You know, they start to be authentic. If they don't feel like wearing makeup anymore, they won't. You know what I'm saying? You start, because you realize that you got to cut away the BS, because you ain't got much time on this earth, right? And so
that's when you see them taking trips, going
yes,
skydiving, the stuff they've
yes,
been putting off forever. It's like,
right,
oh, I'm it's nothing else. I got to do it right now.
right, exactly. And so that's the reason why John, he does it. So what are we doing at Death Cafe? And you know, again, when I was at the library, I would have cake on nice dishes and flatware, and I would have coffee. I mean, it would be like you were in an actual cafe. And so I would hand out a list of quotes. And so the maximum is 15. It lasts 2 hours. And out of the list of quotes, I'll ask everyone to select a quote and tell the rest of the group why it resonates with you. And so the quotes could be anything. Joe Lewis used to say, everybody wants to get to heaven, but no one wants to die. Woody Allen said, I don't mind dying, I just don't want to be there when it happens. It was this comedian named Will Shriner, I think it was before my time, but he said, I want to die in my sleep like my grandfather, not like the people screaming in the car with him. I mean, so stuff like that, right? And so from there, what's so interesting is that two people or three people might pick the same quote, but for different reasons. So that gives a different perspective on that. And so the Death Cafe is three things. Is that one, everything is kept confidential. You know, you can say, you know, I was at Death Cafe and this person said that, but you can't say I was at Death Cafe and you know that Lisa Oliver from such and such, well, she told this, you know, so everything is kept confidential. Everything, we all respect each other's, what you call it, opinions, right? So you know, it's no disrespect, like that's the craziest thing I ever heard, or you don't say anything like that. And third is that no one is to try to impress upon someone their views, you know, so everyone is an independent thinker, we're all to respect. And one thing I realized I had to do is start saying, we're going to be succinct, because once people realize they're not going to be judged in their opinion and that they're not going to be, you know, thought of being weird, we all start to flow, you know, and it's an amazing thing, you know, and so many people have came to the Death Cafe, you know, not knowing what to expect. And you know how people have, you know how you can people by their body language, they're all closed up. And then, you know, we all used to hug each other goodbye because we were having such a good time, right?
Okay.
And so it's literally 2 laugh out loud moments at least every Death Cafe. And actually I started it back up. So I'm doing this Sunday, I'm doing a Death Cafe, you know, it's virtual on Zoom from 3 to 5. And if someone's interested, they can go to my website. Can I tell them my website?
Absolutely.
www.drlisaoliver.com. So that's DRLISAOLIVER.com. And if you go to events, it'll tell you when I'm going to have the next Death Cafe and how to get in touch. So I'm going to do death cafes every first Sunday of the month.
Okay.
And then I decided to do a pandemic grief cafe. And I haven't figured it out how I'm going to do it. I'm going to do that every third Sunday. But, we have lost so much in the pandemic that we are grieving a lot. If we could just talk about, when someone dies, we cannot go to a funeral anymore,
Yes.
especially I'm going to say in the Black community, but I think all of us do that. All of us, when someone dies, we go to the house and we all grieve together, right? We tell stories and we laugh and we talk. Then we all go to the wake or the viewing and we just, it's a whole lot of community and fellowship and drinking and talking and whatever.
Right.
And we can't do any of that now. So in addition to grieving the person that died, we are grieving the way that we used to grieve. So it's compounded grief. It's this, that. And so I'm thinking there's really a need. And actually I was reading an article in the Washington Post that we're coming up on 1 year of the pandemic. And so there is so much grief. Just, you can't, it's all these things that we can't do. People losing jobs, you can't go outside of it, So I'm thinking that there is a need to open up a space just to talk about what it is we're going through. Will it do automatic healing? I don't think so. But I think the fact that if I use the Death Cafe principles and just give people a moment to share what they're going through, I think it'll be healing along the line. So in addition to Death Cafe, we're going to do Grief Cafe.
So guys, check her out on the 1st, and I think you said the 3rd Sunday.
Yeah.
So either one of those, pop in, register, get some information. I love all of this.
Thanks.
What would you want people to take away from this? If nothing else, if they could just get one thing, because I think you and I talk about it. We need to normalize talking about death. It is inevitable. It's just like birth. You will not get out of here without dying. Like that is just the way it is.
Exactly.
But I think we got to give people baby steps. They're not there yet, especially as a culture. We are still just not there.
Right.
Yet. So how can we ease them into the space we're in? We talk about death all the time.
I know. You know what? I think like anything, when we don't know about it, we're afraid of it.
Yeah.
And so, just like anything, I don't know, when you first take a new job, you're afraid of, am I going to know where the bathroom is? And so if we just, if we treat it like anything else that's new to us, that's foreign, you might be afraid of someone who looks like a bully. But then when you get to know them, is really, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like anything else, we got to educate ourselves. And through education, we realize, what, it's not something that I wanted to happen, but it's going to happen. And, and I guess I want to appeal to people's ego. Let's leave a legacy of peace and order, right? And so, nothing drives me more crazy than folks not having insurance, and you got to pass the hat and do a GoFundMe. That drives me crazy. Especially, it's one thing if it's a child that dies or something. But
right, like they're 17.
Right.
They probably don't have life insurance. Right. When you're 45, I'm not giving you no money. I'm telling you now, if you listen to this podcast, I'm not putting nothing in the hat. Nothing.
We are passing the hat. I am so tired of that because doggone it. I mean, and I'm going to tell you something. My mother-in-law, she got something called a penny life insurance policy. I mean, a life insurance policy is not that much, right? But she had 10 children, and each of the children got about $1,000 so that they contribute to. I mean,
I think again, I think that goes back to what you just said earlier about education. And we actually interviewed someone that's all she does is deal with life insurance. And so I'm really excited when that episode drops because people need to be educated. They don't understand that life insurance is not that expensive.
Right.
There was days Big Ma and all of them paid for life insurance. And I think something as a culture has shifted where we're not as educated about it. They would be, the man would come.
The man would come to the house. Yes.
So they would pay their little money. It was like set. There was no confusion. They were going to have life insurance. Right, and I think about my mother-in-law because she is the perfect example. Is she? But when I tell you everything paid, we just got to show up. I think her outfit is paid.
Okay.
I'm so grateful for her. But yeah, that was a culture of life insurance. And
Right.
now we've gone away from it. And I guess we're just like, they'll figure it out. Go fund me.
Yeah.
It's not my problem.
Right. And that's what a lot of people, and it isn't their problem because they're dead. But by the same token, I think if we love our youngins, so I was thinking, it would be great just to get enough money to bury, but it would be good to start doing some legacy planning and getting up, but that's a whole nother thing. But I think, God, I lost my train of thought.
It happened.
I know.
But I'll say to your legacy point, because me and the guest that talked about life insurance talked about this too, because I saw a meme that said that, and I said it in that episode. I'm going to say it to y'all again so you can go buy some life insurance. Master P's grandfather left him like a $10,000 policy when he passed away. He then used that to become the mogul he is now, worth what, like 250 million or some crazy number.
That's how he started No Limit Records.
And that's the power of life insurance and the power of legacy building, because you never know what skills and talents are locked in someone, and they just need the capital, the little bit of seed to get it going. And it don't even have to be big. Like he just got what he got and knew what to do with it. Yeah. And so yes, life insurance, I could get on my soapbox about that all day long.
And it's not even that. I mean, again, we could.
But I think if we normalize having this conversation about death, having your things in order, and having the proper life insurance, like it should be as normal as talking about your taxes. Like April 15th, we just all fall in line. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I think that's where I want us as a culture to go, to a place where it's just like, hey, you got life insurance, and we talk about it around the table. Like it's no big deal.
And that's how I want people to talk about advanced directives. It's like, okay, if I can't, the question I have for people when I talk about advanced directives is, who's going to speak for you when you're unable to speak for yourself? And that is so important. I mean, because I'll have people say, well, I told my wife and she knows what to do. Well, that's my brother. My brother is prime example. Oh, I know, because my brother is he practices Islam, and he's like, well, my wife knows what to do with it. But when someone dies, you really have to have it written down.
It is. And I tell people, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I tell people all the time, because we are in a place of crisis. We're in a place of grief and a place of panic. I can't remember what you told me last week. You telling me that I'm supposed to remember all these major life decisions? Come on, stop playing.
No, for real. And then, and the mind plays tricks on you. It's like, well, my husband's name is Jeff. Jeff did say do this, but he was kind of playing when he said it. So maybe he didn't really,
Like my husband laughed at the end. So does that mean he didn't really mean that?
Right.
And we're talking major medical decisions. Like we watching TV and you talking about, oh no, I don't never want to be amputated.
Exactly.
Did you mean it? Because now I'm faced having to really decide.
Right.
So that's the kind of stuff that, me and you are on the same page when it comes to getting the healthcare documents in place. And from the legal side, I talk about the Terry Schiavo case, because I think we're all of a generation where we can all remember that case. And there were some very big cases that came even before her. But for those who are listening that might be a little younger and don't remember, Terry Schiavo got married. She was 25 years old, newlywed. They living their best life. Then I don't even remember how, but she got really sick. She ended up in the hospital, and they were at a place where they needed to make a major decision on whether they were going to keep her on life support or go ahead and pull the plug. Can't remember which one, but husband said one thing, her parents said another. So I think the husband said, let's just go ahead and pull it. And the parents was like, oh no, you need to fight. They end up in court. End up spending a whole ton of money.
It was years.
Yes, it went on for quite a while because she didn't have anything written down, and it really was not clear who ultimately could make that decision. Right. And what I tell people is there is so much expense to that too. If you're not only thinking about the medical bills that are piling up while they find it out in court, then there's the legal fees, and then there's just the emotional toll. Yes. The husband and her parents should have been grieving and celebrating who she was. Now we just fighting it out. Like we are straight. So imagine what that relationship was like after.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? The folks might not know Terry Schiavo, but they know who John Singleton is.
Oh, absolutely.
Because so for those of y'all who don't know, John Singleton was, I think he was the youngest director to make a movie. He made Boys in the Hood in the 90s. Fast forward 2 years ago, he has a stroke. So he has about 7 children and he had no advance directive. So his mother, because she was kind of handling his finances and his business, she was trying to make the decisions. But then there was one of the children that she would go and tell the press that no, he's doing fine. And so there was this going back and forth. And then it got into a decision, well, what we need to do. Because here's another thing. You know, we all are in a cycle of like 30 days. So then there's some bills that were due. So then the mother needed to go and pay some of these bills. And then the daughter was like, no, my grandma don't need to do this because she squanders the money. So they're going to court. Who gets control of, you know, who's taking care of things while John is unable to take care of things? So again, instead of loving on each other, they were at the courthouse. And like you said, it ain't cheap because you got lawyers and all this stuff going on. So you're away from the loved one who really kind of probably needs you to hold his hand and say, I love him. And you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then John finally dies. Okay, so John had a will, but John's will had not been updated since his first child. And he had 6 more children after that and a couple of baby mamas, you know, a couple of marriages. So you got like all these entities trying to get this little bit of money. And like you were saying, so you got court costs, you know, let's say it's $1 million. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm sure it was more than that. But that $1 million, you have attorney's fees, you have. So the court gave it to the one child, but then the other 6 are petitioning for the money to get broken out. So they might end up with like $3.33 by the time it's all over, right?
And that's the sad reality.
Yes.
What we try to get people to understand is when you don't do proper planning, because you'd be like, oh, it's just going to go to this person anyway. Right. Not after all the fees and costs. And if you leave debt, some of that debt needs to be paid. If you left taxes, you got tax debt. IRS, listen, it go with you to the grave. Let me be very clear. They're coming for their coins. Right. And so you have to take all that into consideration. It's like, well, shoot, if my bills got to be paid, what's going to be left for my family? And a lot of times it's very little.
It's very little.
And so getting people to talk about it, write about it, let people know, like be very transparent about what their wishes are. Whew, that's the journey. That's the goal.
It is. And people are and that's one thing, you know, like I said, John didn't have an advance directive. So, you know, they was just arguing right out the gate. And like I said, it went on to the funeral. I'm sure the funeral, there was argument. It went on to the will, and so that's just crazy. And so one of the things John could have done, and this is, you know, when you have an advance directive, you got to pick the best person. Just because you love someone the most may not be the best person to execute your wishes, because again, you need someone who's objective, right? Mm-hmm. And so you could have someone, there's instances where there was a husband and wife, they were married for 40 years. The wife explicitly said she didn't want any heroic measures. The husband realized, who am I? I've always been Edna's husband. So he went ahead and brought her back to life, and she woke up and she was pissed. So that trust. And then it was like maybe a son and a father, and the son realized that he did not spend as much time with his father as he wanted. So in the hospital, in the ICU, they're not going to let you just lay there until you get yourself together, right? They're going to have tests going on. And a lot of times the tests and the therapies are more stressful in the individual than the person just being allowed to go. And for this instance, right, the father said he just wanted to go. But a lot of times our wants and our needs supersede the person's wishes. So Absolutely. you gotta pick a person who you know is going to be a pit bull against the other family members and against the medical establishment, because a lot of times we see someone who has a white coat on and a stethoscope, and we automatically give them all our power because they know more than us. And maybe they do know more than us in terms of medicine, but in terms of what your mother or your sister wanted, you know. And if you have a document in black and white with this, you know, that kind of gives you the power to know, yes, this is what mom wants because this is her signature right here. So it's so important to equip our loved ones with the tools that we need, you know, and not be afraid. You know, you're going to, if you say the youngest child, you want that person to handle it. I'm sure the other children are going to be, a lot of times we don't want to rock the boat. I'm sure you've
Yes.
seen that.
Yes. And I hear, especially in the Black community, oh, well, just let the oldest do it. Why? That's the one that is on drugs out here in the street, come around
Right.
every other Thanksgiving begging for
Right.
money. Like, why would you put them in charge?
Right.
But for some reason, we have this belief about birth order as if that magically makes that person the most responsible.
Exactly.
And so we got to get out of that space. We got to say, okay, who is going to carry out what I'm going to put down on this paper? I talk to people all the time. The doctors, they're at the end of the day, their oath is to do no harm. And that can directly conflict with what's in your best interest.
Yes.
Your interest and no harm, they might not be on the same page.
Exactly.
And so who is going to be the one to say, yeah, I'm not following that. That's not what she wanted.
Right. And I'm not saying doctors are nefarious, but let's just say, for example, you're at a research hospital and there's an ailment that fits perfectly into the research of this physician, right? So he wants to do this test or this whatever, and it's because it's going to further his research, right? It's not going to help you. And so again, that's why you need someone to say, no, this is what my mom wants. And, and again, once the person dies, you had that document and you knew you did the right thing. And so that's such a piece to the person.
And that's the thing. Not only is it a piece to the person, but it's a piece to you. You're not left guessing. You're not out here like, did I pull the plug and she wanted to still be here?
Right.
Ultimately take that doubt, that burden off of the person by doing your documents. You leave them, you absolve them of any guessing, confusion, second guessing. You're not going to have the cousin talk about she killed Big Mom. None of that.
Exactly. And
you
that's
squash
how
all
we
that
are.
beef. Like, look, it's right here in black and white. That's her signature at the bottom. I just did what she told me.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I don't remember now. And be honest, I was telling, because I do this funeral planning, again, at the library, I do this funeral planning session, and I would tell people, be honest with what money is or is not there. Because, a lot of times we look at the housewives of Atlanta, and you want the Willy Wonkas with the doves and fly, and that costs money, right?
Yes.
But people think that's what they have, but they have $2,000. I mean, $2,000 is $2,000, but you ain't gonna get the Willy Wonkas with the horse-drawn carriage and all like that, right? You get a good cremation, but and so I have done death cafes where people have shared that they have hocked their jewelry so they can do something for their mother. And, again, people feel bad. We go into debt to go buy, I'm going to tell a story. My mama, she died in a car accident. And that's not funny, but she said she wanted the mahogany casket, right? So in 1998, a mahogany casket cost $20,000. Now, you know what? I would have got that because mom died in a car accident, I would have gotten that money back. But you know what? In my right mind, I could not put $20,000 in the ground, right? So what I did was got a pine box and stained it mahogany. I mean, I ain't stained it, but I paid for it to stain it. It was mahogany. It was beautiful. And I was in my right mind. It's like, my mom, and she hasn't haunted me since, right? She's been dead 22 years. So she's been, what I'm saying? So
the pine worked out. She
right. So I think she all right with it, right? But, we have to be, I've just heard a lot of stories about folks spending a lot of money that we don't have. It's one thing if you Michael Jackson or James Brown, you get a 14-karat gold, casket.
Yes,
but,
absolutely.
But for a lot of us, we ain't got the money. And, again, we hear Big Mama, she looking at the housewife like, oh, I want a Willy Wonka's video. Well, honey, we got to be realistic. If there's no money, there's no money.
But if that's her wish, though, tell her, Mom, you can prepay for that. Let's go down there and start on that.
Yes,
let's put that on layaway. Let's go ahead and do it like we used to.
Yeah, no, that's true. If Big Mama was, you're right. She need to do a little bit more than just to letting everybody know, right?
Yes, that is not right. Again, these oral wishes are not where it's at. We need to write that down. So she need to put some paper with it. She need to go on down there and put that on layaway and start her payment plan.
Right,
and exactly. She might not finish it, but I can finish it, but she need to get that started.
She need to
put a dent in that.
No, you're absolutely right.
Well, so Dr. Oliver, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just want the folks to know, just like you and I are talking back and forth and we sharing stories, that's how the death talk could be. We like, I even talked about my mother. I mean, we all have these stories and experiences, and it's not all bad. I mean,
I'll leave us on this story. My son, literally 2 weeks ago, his goldfish died. He's
Okay.
9. Like, he is 9. He is a baby. And
Yeah.
this was his first experience with death. And he is crying. He is super emotional. And I guess because, this is the work we do, I'm sitting there like, what in the world? But I also looked at it as this opportunity to start talking about death and normalizing it with him as young as he is.
Yes.
Because you are absolutely right, to bring it back to what you said earlier. All our seasons of life is going to have grief, death, and dying involved. Like, this goldfish is just the beginning, baby.
Yes.
You get, a dog, he's going to get old. Like, it's going to continue.
Right.
And the more we can start normalizing it, the younger, by the time we get to Big Mom, he'd be like, well, she going to go to heaven with my goldfish. Like,
right, there you go. Right.
It's as normal as anything else. So,
right.
No, I definitely, so many gems in this episode. I cannot thank you enough. I want the people to start having these conversations.
Yeah.
Start joking about it with Big Ma, so you know what she, where her mind is. And then get her in a serious moment and go have her do her advanced directives and make sure she has all of her estate planning done. So when that time comes, everybody's on the same page. There is no confusion. You pull out the paperwork, be like, this is what it is. And then we just spend that time. I think what you said earlier about just being able to be there with that person as they make that transition. And it's not the drama and the confusion that we are unfortunately so used to. Now that has become the norm, and that is the problem.
Yeah, that's true. And like I said earlier, I volunteered at a hospice, and honest to God, when you can share that moment with someone who's transitioning from this life to, it is just, it's amazing. I mean, it is just, because spirits come back and they see people that died a long time ago. I mean, that's a whole nother story for them, but it's just really, death is not something to be afraid of. I mean, it really is. And if spend some time in a hospice and you'll see, it's just, wow.
I think it's such a cultural a construct. We view death as this like morbid thing. We all sad and we falling out the whole 9. And so many other cultures, though,
Embrace
it is beautiful.
Yes.
It is the most like celebrated, welcomed part. Yeah. And so I want to see us get to that place where even if we not, shouting and hollering and excited about it, at least we okay. We can talk about it and we're not so afraid of it. Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you for having me.
You knew I was already excited about this.
I know, but we can do this again. I can talk about something else too, because I got a lot of because as you can tell, I'm really passionate about it, and I just want people to see it's not that bad. So go to the website. You can go to the thing, and you realize I talk like this all the time, and it's not as bad.
Okay, tell them where they can find your podcast. Tell them where they can find your book. Tell them where they can find all they need to find.
Okay, so the book is on Amazon. It's Final Wishes by Lisa Oliver, EDD. You can go to YouTube channel to find Dr. Lisa Talks About. But you know what, too? If you just go to my website, which is www.drlisaoliver.com, that's DRLISAOLIVER.com, it'll take you to, the website. I mean, not the website, but to the book, to Dr. Lisa Talks About. I have some on-demand education classes. I shared, my sister 2 months ago, she died of a drug overdose. And I shared the type of grief that I felt as a result of the overdose. And I got a lot of feedback because I was very transparent. So, I wanted people to realize the type of grief that because there's like so many different types of grief. The type of grief you experience when something like that happens, when you deal with someone who has addiction. So if you go to my website, you'll see all this wealth of information, and it's really
I didn't know that. I don't know about the types of grief, so we might have to have a whole episode just on grief.
We might have to do that. I I like talking about this stuff. So.
All right, guys, check out Dr. Oliver. Her information is going to be in the show notes, so you could just click on the link. We try to make it easy for you. And as always, we thank you so much for listening. If you have any feedback, if you love the show, please drop us a review. Hit us on all of our social media channels. It's safe space. If there is a question, if something you want to hear on the show, let us know. Until the next episode, talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks for joining us this week on Black Parents Aging. Check out our Facebook group at Black Parents Aging, where we go live to answer your questions. For more info on today's topic, check out the show notes on our website, srlawgrp.com. If you know someone who could benefit from today's episode, please share a link to the show. Subscribe to the show to catch new episodes and leave a review. Until next week.